there is so many options now online of people being exposed to this. Sign up for this Amazon course and you can make £100,000 a month. And I have this friend and they're doing this and they're an influencer and they get paid to travel and blah, blah, blah. There is a bit of kind of shiny object syndrome in that people might love what they're doing, they're good at what they do, and maybe they do have ambitions to, get that pay rise, get that promotion, get that seat at the table, get the equity, like whatever, start their own thing, like whatever that trajectory is that they envision for themselves. But then they have all of this outside noise around them going, yeah, but you could be doing this, or you could be doing this, or you could be doing this, or you could be doing this. And one of the things that I've found in talking to, certainly younger people and a couple of people that I mentor is, but what do I focus on? Like, and I think it takes a really self-aware person and probably someone who's a bit longer in the tooth, like AKA 30 and above, or, whatever, to actually go, no, that's what I'm going to do, because I know that if I really hone my skills and become an expert in that, then I'm going to get the payoff in the end, as opposed to jumping ship every 6 months.
Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for young people coming into the workforce or starting their career. You have these factors that are just, you're consistently consuming the 1% of talent, beauty, wealth, and you just have this very skewed view of the world. You compound that with, you haven't developed your own systems, or you're going through forming your identity and figuring out what you like and what you don't, and you're trying to navigate the world, and what you described, just so many choices. And I think that creates an immense pressure on a young mind. I think it creates an immense pressure on anyone's mind, never mind young people, but at least as you've gone through life, you start to, I suppose, become more self-aware. And that does take time. So yeah, I have a ton of empathy for young people going into that. But equally, two things can be true. You can go, it's very difficult today to navigate these waters, but it's equally the best time to be alive, whether that's opportunity, whether that's, the fact that we have all this intelligence at our fingertips, and we can build businesses at light speed. And now, someone who grew up in Barnsley, which is objectively like a low aspirational place, like I can now, someone in my position several years ago can go on social media and just see someone and have a view into a world that they never knew existed. I didn't have that, and I think that is a wonderful thing. So it's very easy to say, okay, there's all this pressure, there's all these difficulties. Yes, that's true, but there's also polarity. There's so many amazing opportunities for people.
It's never been easier to win, I don't think.
Yes.
Ever. Like, even if you take, for example, education, you've got more power in your pocket, in your phone, than Bill Clinton had in the White House. Like, you have more
100%.
access to knowledge than Bill Clinton did in the White House. And that is a mind-blowing thing, because that wasn't even that long ago. Like, genuinely, it wasn't that long ago. And I do think also university and like kind of the higher education piece, you used to have to pay, in many cases, especially in America, hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to obtain that information. You can now do it for free on YouTube.
Yeah, and go one step further. My friend wrote a tweet and he said, you're 4 connections away from Jeff Bezos.
That's wild.
Just deep that for a second. You're literally like, that person that knows that person that's connected to Jeff.
Yeah.
Like, think how big, vast the world is, but equally how small. And that, to me, again, if you have the right mindset, I think is very empowering. I
love that. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I love social media so much. Which brings me really nicely onto kind of what you guys do. We'll talk about self-promotion shortly, because I think that is a huge synergy between the two of us, but also a massive part of modern marketing is self-promotion and personal branding. You recently said that brands need to put more effort into measuring the most useful metrics, and that's not easy, but it's also easy to do. What did you mean by that? Like, what are the things that brands should be focusing on from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, I tend to try and, when I want to understand a topic, I'm a big believer that you need context. So I speak a lot about zooming out. And if I look at the environment in which we communicate today, we've got a few things at play. We have this like normalization of scale. It feels normal to reach millions of people. That's not normal. There's nothing normal about that. It feels you have these skews in the world where your actions are usually dictated by feedback But you have to remember social media is by and large the silent majority. So you don't have all the answers. You base your actions based on a very kind of small percentage of the real feedback and the real perceptions that you have. And there's a philosophy, it's called the McNamara fallacy. And it was developed back in the 60s or 70s. And it's this idea that people measure what's easy, not what is necessary. And if I look at marketing as it's evolved, you go back over the course of history and we couldn't measure much. You couldn't
It was
really
Henry
measure.
Ford, didn't he? He said
Yeah,
that I don't know which half of my marketing has worked or not.
yeah. We couldn't measure much. And then as we've digitized, we now have attribution. And that's wonderful because that data allows us to form insights that then help us shape our decision making. And we're now starting to take more of the guesswork out of marketing. The problem with that is you then get into a world where you're measuring what's easy. And the biggest fallacy in marketing is like, we'll measure, if you're in the business of selling something, you'll measure the last click and you'll attribute that last click. And you'll now form all your decisions based on that $1 you spent because that's last click. That to me is the equivalent of saying that the only person in a sport team or a football team is the person that takes the penalty. Think of how many influences, consciously and subconsciously, you have on your decision-making process. We're all the same. And this idea that the only thing that matters is that thing at the end that we can attribute is so wrong. And that's the wonderful thing about marketing. Marketing is very accessible. Marketing doesn't change. Marketing is taking a product, a service, a message, and an idea and trying to communicate that in the most effective way to get an outcome. That is marketing. How we go about it, the tactics, the tools, the systems, the channels, all of that changes and it's in constant change. However, the principles of marketing always remain the same because we're connecting with people. And I think that's an art that is now getting buried in a over-digitized world where everything is measured. It's like we can't see the wood for the trees. We're focused on the wrong things. And I think it's the same to be said in your world of like personal branding. The pursuit of, relentless likes, I think leads people down the wrong path of not putting intention into what it is they're actually trying to say.
We were saying this earlier, right? It's like, what is the outcome you want? So
Yes.
my outcome is I want to build my brand into, a media company so I can execute a certain number of things that I want to do. Like I want to do the documentaries, I wanted to make this podcast massive, all of that kind of stuff. And so my intention with my content is to help people see who I am so they can connect with me because they see themselves in my content. It's one of the reasons I talk about the trials and tribulations of running the business and like the craziness of trying to co-parent and single mom of 2 kids and like all that kind of stuff, because everyone can relate to that in some capacity. However, there are some people who will see even content that I'm putting like that and have a different goal, aka like you do, generate leads, generate brand awareness for Flight Story and for other business ventures, who will go down the garden path of, oh, well, that post of that CEO crying got 6,000 likes, so like maybe I should do the same thing. And
Yes.
I know you did a post recently about getting sympathy likes and why that is not a good thing that we should celebrate. What did you talk to me about that thought process?
It's a dangerous trap, and I see it from founders all the time. So, the attention economy is a wonderful one. We all know that if you can get attention on yourself, the things you're building, your people, it's a multiplier of success, and it's such an advantage in the modern world. In every
I think
sense
it's one of the
word.
if not the number one asset you can have in a business. Is attention.
100%. It is. It's probably in a world where you can create things much easier. To start a business is easier than ever. It's only going to get easier. To create value is only going to get easier through new technologies. So the only commodity or competitive advantage you can have is distribution, attention. So cultivating the skills to know how to capture attention, to grow audiences, to build a platform, that's one of the most important things anyone can have. I say it for young people all the time. I call it digital leverage. When you're young, you have many disadvantages. You don't have experience, you don't have the network, you don't always know what you're doing, You don't have resources, but what you do have is often digital leverage. You learn skills that are increasingly important in the world. But going back to the sympathy likes thing, I see so many people that start attaching themselves to the wrong metric. So you said, I add intention. I speak about things and I show a side of yourself because it's furthering your agenda. What a lot of people do is they don't know why you're doing it. They don't know your intention. So they just look and they copy you. They go, I'm going to be vulnerable, or I'm going to share this piece. And what they will do is they will get likes, they'll get extra engagement. But what's the unintended consequences of doing that? If you run a business and you walk in the room and say, imagine like in the office and going, we have no money in the bank. You know, just going in the room, we have no money. I was depressed at the weekend. I was crying, just like came in. Does that create an environment what people want to feel secure? You look to your leaders and leadership to instill confidence. So if you were doing that, yes, you will get lots of likes because people will admire the vulnerability. They will admire, they may empathize with that. But what is the cost? And the cost to me is your clients have less confidence in you, in our world, and your team, although they won't say it, they have formed an opinion on you. They don't feel as secure. They may jump ship because they don't have that sense that you have it covered. So yes, two things again can be true. You can show a side of you that is more vulnerable and more relatable. But if your intention is to build a business, pursuing likes is like one of the worst things that you can do. And it just leads to like misguided decision making. It's the McNamara fallacy. I can measure likes. I can measure that small validation that I get online. And I can feel good about that. But what you can't measure is what people actually think of you. How many clients are turned off? How many of your team are now feeling uncomfortable as a result of something that you shared? That's hard to measure.